tale as old as online video game discussions. Game does some things great and some things not so great. But in Forbidden West's case, the gap is so large that it feels like equivalent of alternating between a bite of filet mignon or a bite from a McDonald's. This game is a technical masterpiece with one of the few decent female protagonists in the market. It often sometimes has moments of true open world brilliances, but it is a disappointing narrative, one with one-dimensional side characters and tedious system that continues to hold it back from RPG greatness that Sony wants Horizon so desperately to obtain. Horizon Zero Dawn was one of my favorite PlayStation published game ever, and I think that the past 6 years have been kind to it. Zero Dawn was revealed in 2015, and it's almost impossible to imagine a new IP with the premise of this bizarre coming out of Sony's first-party game nowadays. The story of an overconfident tech CEO with God complex damning the entire world to run rather than admit that he may be wrong, like a future we grow closer and closer every day, is fascinating. The inspiration coming from our own world leaders' refusal to acknowledge and repair the damage we have caused to our planet. While this is not unique in games in general, but it does provide a horrifying and a cautionary theme of environmental concerns and unchecked capitalism. Elizabeth Sobeck, Ted Faro, and along with most of the backstory of Zero Dawn was some of the best writings I have ever seen in AAA market, and easily one of the highlights of this game. John Gonzalez truly did a fantastic job in the lore for this universe. And others surprisingly was not the main narrative of Aloy, but rather the gameplay. Guerrilla made the first-person shooters prior to this. Although Killzone 2 was one of the best military FPS campaigns of all time, I don't think anybody expected them to nail the open world third-person action as hard as they did first time. A dozen of unique weapons, elemental ammo types, and a huge variety of detachable parts and weapons led to a massive amount of potential gameplay variability. If there are two areas that I think Zero Dawn faltered at, would be in open world design and the main narrative. Settlements never felt unique. The only towns that felt truly real and lived in was Meridian. I think that the world would be greatly benefited by having a few more factions. Funny considering that John Gonzalez was the lead writer on Forbidden West, arguably the force behind some of the greatest factions of all time in Fallout New Vegas. The story, while introducing us to Aloy, which I quite like, never quite hit it for me on an emotional beats. The special and the unrepeatable aesthetics of Horizon's world and the story makes it easy to overlook those problems. Forbidden West doesn't have the advantage of being the first entry and needed to knock these areas out of the park. And sometimes it does. Let's start with the good. Horizon Forbidden West open world is leagues better than Zero Dawn. Not only it is more beautiful, but it is also far more diverse in its mission design and the sheer verticality of the landscape, combined with gameplay systems accompanying this to completely changes the traversal. The biggest change is how well thought out, lived in and believable the world feels. Yeah, there are some dumbness like the hostile machines hanging out fairly uh, close to the human camps, but for the most part, it feels much more purposeful this time around in open world aspect. The map can be divided into 5 main sections: the tutorial, the 3 main sections 2 to 4, and the San Francisco. The 3 Tenekath factions that you will meet live in section 3 and 4. In between section 2 and 3 is an absolutely massive mountain range that completely splits the Tenekath from the east. Sorry, this was hard to visualize, but the geography of the open world and the story it tells is important. No wonder that Karja raids was a complete failure when they tried to move on in Tenekath territory, when they had a massive wall of rock and ice protecting them. I don't think the game ever explicitly states this, but it is something obvious from the gameplay design when Aloy makes her way to the tribe's territory. The Tenekath tribes blows every faction in Zero Dawn completely out of the water. If you can't tell them from my previous comment, I love when the terrain is a setting plays into the story. That element is prevalent everywhere. The desert clan is low on water. The jungle clan is worried about surprise attacks, and the Snow Mountain is losing members in blizzard, just to name a few examples. The Oseram, Otaru and Quan are all completely distinct and interesting as well. They all have memorable side quests and elegantly fit into the world. The Tenekath remains my favorite though because of the connected story between them all. Overall, this is the largest step up from Zero Dawn from the gameplay offers and totally makes the price of admission worth it. I see a lot of people try to dunk on Forbidden West for being a generic open world, and I think that's just really ignorant. There's not a whole lot of repeated content, and even the missions with similar structures are all very distinct from one another, and sometimes so insanely creative that I struggle to think how anyone commented had played the game in any attentive sort of way. Unfortunately, I don't think that the same can be said for the overarching stories that the Aloy finds himself in. Main narrative in open world games are hard, and that cannot be understated enough. Although it have been done successfully several times, I'm not going to type out everyone's favorite and often misused game criticism terms out. So since I know someone will certainly comment. But it is a problem here, especially in the third act. I would say there are 3 main stories happening all at once in Forbidden West, and they are all stumbled throughout the race. The most interesting story is of course Far Zenith. The backstory of these characters is really wacky sci-fi gush, and it fits perfectly in the world Zero Dawn has started. A group of wealthy elite left Earth as it was dying to go seek a paradise for themselves. Not only they did Not only did they had find what they are looking for, they almost managed to develop immortality at the same time. The far Zenith seemingly won big time after abandoning the Earth's fellow Earth citizen. So why are they returning, and why are they trying to destroy the Earth? That's the game's big mystery, and the narrative really hinges on the answer of these questions. Basically, an AI that they created is hunting them down, and they need to reset Earth so it stops chasing them. I hate this. Not only it is an unsatisfying cliffhanger, but it also completely turns against the message of the first game. Yes, you are literally fighting a mechanical beings, but the technology was not the enemy of Zero Dawn. The villain is an unchecked corporate greed and stubbornness and completely disregard of human safety. I understand that Aloy needs a big bad to fight to finish the trilogy. But I really don't see how they will make it even remotely compelling for me. There is King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard album that called Infest, the Rat Nest, where the rich people of Earth pull the same move that the far Zeniths do and terraform the Mars, leaving the lower classes behind. Once the Earth is no longer habitable, the remaining Earthlies began to move to Venus and make a deal with the devil and invade Mars to slaughter the wealthy that abandoned them, aka the Rat Nest. Imagine a third Horizon game instead of taking the fight to the far Zenith's homeworld after capturing the ship at the end. This was a dumb tangent, but I really can't stop thinking about it. Then we get to the Aloy story, and I have to say I love Aloy as a character a bit here. One of my favorite bits in this game is how everyone in the East refers to her as Savior. Karja literally has a monument built for her outside the capital. It's such an emotional whiplash for the character. Just a couple of years ago, she was viewed as an outcast and nobody wanted her, and now she is celebrated throughout the lands. These are two sides of the same coin. In both instances, she is being judged for who she is labeled rather than who she is, and this never stops. Later, when Tilda joins the group, she takes every opportunity to cast Aloy as Sobek. Aloy's story is one of the learning that who she is while opening up and connecting to the others. Her unwavering drive to do what is right and defend humanity gets in the way of things though, as she outright dismisses those that try to reach us out. Unfortunately, I don't feel like the narrative believably resolves this though. Yes, at the end of the game, Aloy has one big Mass Effect crew, but did she really connect it to any of them? Most of the missions were done solo, and there aren't many moments where she is forced to open up with anyone. She comes closest with Varl, where they speak of her guardian as a child, and that's really it. I feel like the game really needed a couple of scenes that were emotional gut punches. Varl's death could have been this, but Aloy ultimately seems unfazed. It is such a baffling moment and a baffling decision writing wise. I don't understand. It should have been one of the highlights of this game, but it was not. There are so many underwhelming moments in this writing and this storyline. So this game really feels like a 2 step forwards, 4 step backwards type of deal. That's it for today's video. Wait for my next part. Thank you.